Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Haribol. So the topic I was asked to speak on is where can real peace be found? And of course it's a yogic perspective. We live in a really extraordinary time. It's actually unparalleled in human history in terms of the introduction of ideas and the use of highly manipulative technologies and messaging, where we can see over the last 100 years a massive transformation of the individual, unlike anything in the history of mankind. There hasn't been anything like this ever before. And unfortunately, we don't really appreciate how profound is the influence and the devastating effect that it is having. The rise in depression and severe depression and great unhappiness, in what's called self-harm and suicidal thoughts and acts, has just risen exponentially in the last 15 years. It's like off the charts. When you look at data, especially long data sets over 100 years or thereabouts on the things where records were being kept, and you see the rise in this, and particularly amongst the young, and particularly amongst the very young, what they call pre-teens, which is age 10 to 14. It's just like, it's almost unbelievable. And it is symptomatic of a generation, a civilization that has lost its way. What are we living for? What are we doing? It's like everybody's got so into nose down. I can remember a few years ago, quite a few years ago, I was still living in the Philippines, and there was a guy that I was doing some business with. He was a Filipino living in America. And he hadn't been back to the Philippines for like 10 years or 12 years. And he came back, and it was at the beginning of the introduction of the smartphone. And he was just absolutely stunned. The Philippines used to be called, or the text capital of the world. They had all the data on it. They were sending and receiving more text messages than any other population. And what blew his mind is you go out in the street and everybody's looking down. they're walking along, but everybody's looking down and madly working the phone as they walk along. And for him, it was absolutely astonishing. And of course, this was only the beginning of things. There is absolutely no doubt that a very precious and rare commodity in the world now is peace. Genuine peacefulness, serenity. We have created or willingly participated in this new model of existence. I saw a couple of weeks ago, just over 2 weeks ago, a newspaper headline from the US. And the headline was poll, period. Colon. Americans would spend nearly their entire salary for peace of mind. And what they had done is actually begin to ask people, what would you pay to be free from worry and stress about this or that? They actually specified things and asked people to put money, dollar values. And what they came up with was the average American had stated that they would be willing to spend, on average, $57,000 just for security and serenity. In other words, to describe peacefulness. Many respondents to this poll stated that they feel that peace is less attainable today than it was 5 years ago. I can remember about almost 9 years ago watching a documentary on, they've attempted to redo Woodstock a couple of times over the years. And they, followed the whole production of things. But one of the things they did was talk to all of the younger people that were attending these festivals. And over a couple of years, in 2 of these festivals, they asked the same question of everyone. What do you think is the biggest difference between what was happening in that generation, the original Woodstock generation at that time, and now? What is the big difference? And without exception, although they obviously chose what to put into the documentary, but without exception, all of these young people had the same answer, which was basically, at that time, everybody had hope that the future was going to become better. And now no one feels that way. It was really, really heartbreaking that young people, 18, 20, 24 years of age, that people actually felt that way. And it's like, what have we done? And what is it that we are doing? When it comes to speaking about peace and peacefulness, people have actually kind of lost the plot about what it is and perhaps how one can experience it. And I've carefully chosen that word, experience it. Broadly speaking, many people speak and behave as if peace is like a commodity that you can purchase. And most people probably sitting here are going like, no. But when someone says they want to take a trip to a remote tropical island, to some resort or retreat, to get away from everything, are they not saying that one can spend money and buy peace by moving to a different geographical location? People say, if only I could find some peace. You know, they speak about things like this. Or the idea of going away to somewhere that's quiet and peaceful. So this is the way people are largely thinking, without recognizing that you could go to the most idyllic and quiet, beautiful location and still be completely tormented and deeply disturbed. Because peacefulness has nothing to do with geographic locations. You can't buy it. We're talking about something that's experienced within the heart. To be at peace. One of the great contributors to this lack of peace, and I'll just mention now why I'm speaking about this. If we accept that you could be in a really peaceful, isolated, wonderful location and still be absolutely tormented or distressed or worried or in anxiety about all kinds of things, then what we're speaking about is a state of consciousness. A specific location can aid and assist us, and perhaps, then turning a little bit inwards and seeking some sort of release of all of what it is I've got my head buried in, and seeking to experience some inner transformation. But just transferring to another location is not necessarily going to do that. One of the things that we're experiencing, these little monsters, and I tell you, they are absolutely monsters. Most people have no idea what they're doing when they use the phone, the smartphone. People don't understand that as soon as I turn this on, and often even when I don't turn it on, I am being observed. every single thing that you do with this, somebody is building up a data bank that defines your personality type, your attractions, your tendencies. Even when you try to do a Google search and you begin to write something, then you erase some words and change it, even that is captured. It gives insight into how you think and how you process stuff. They have learned to read your moods and everything that's going on in your life that you communicate about. Maybe not even with words, just the videos that you're selecting to watch, the feed that you're watching. All of this goes into your profile. And it goes there so that you can be exploited to the max. That's all it's for. It used to be that we were just exploited by advertising, which is a form of extraordinary manipulation we'll get to in a moment. But it's gone actually past that. You don't just have people trying to sell you something, offer you something, and so they can get your money. But now you have become a product. The capture of your personal data and how you use these things and how you think and how you function and how you react to things, that is all considered highly valuable information that is monetized. It's big bucks. So you are the consumer, but you're also the product in this new paradigm. And I think you've probably can easily see where I'm going, since the topic is peacefulness. You cannot make choices and decisions and think that there will not be any consequence. There is consequence to everything that you think, that you say, that you do. You pay a price. It's no free lunch. You're going to pay for everything. Just to give you a little idea of the size of the problem, when it comes to advertising, the 5 big tech companies, they account for nearly half of all of the world's advertising or advertising revenue. And this is from 2 years ago. I haven't even looked at the latest stuff. Google, Facebook, Alibaba, TikTok, the owner of ByteDance, or ByteDance is the owner, and Amazon, together, and this is 2 years ago, they generated ad revenue of $296 billion US dollars. That's 420 something Australian dollars, 420 something billion a year. Is that extraordinary or not? It's just like, what? You know, this is why these tech companies are now in the world, they are the companies with mostly the biggest value. And these 5 only represent 46% of the so-called market. You know what the market is? The market is you. You are the market. You are the thing to be exploited. One of the intense results of advertising, manipulation of advertising, is the development of intense self-centeredness, which we can also call selfishness. Now, normally we kind of, no, I'm not self-centered. And the answer is no. You look at your life, you see everything in relation to yourself. You see yourself at the center of everything. When you speak of relationships, my parents, my husband or wife or partner, my children, my friends. This phenomena of increasing self-centeredness, and of course it wasn't like this 100 years ago. Absolutely wasn't like this. If you look at old documentaries, you look at interviews, you look at footage, it's just people functioned in a completely different way. And of course, this has become the age, and it's not just the generation because it's multi-generational, the age of the selfie. What does that mean? It means it's all about me. 15 years ago, if you were out in public and someone came up to you and said, "Could you please take a picture of me?" You'd go, "Yeah, sure." And you'd be thinking maybe they want a memento or something, and okay, and the person stands there. And that person wouldn't do weird stuff, That would be like, whoa, what's going on here? That'd be like creepy, right? That'd be kind of like very strange. And then if you gave the camera back and that person went to someone just over there beside you and asked them, "Could you take a picture of me, please?" You'd be thinking, what? And then as soon as they took the picture, they went over to someone else. "Could you take a picture of me, please?" You'd be thinking, whoa, this person has problems. There's something wrong here. This is like not normal. This is all pre-selfie. It was understood this way. Now it's kind of like, everybody's got the phone out and they've got it on rapid fire. You're doing all the weird stuff. And then they'll look through about 30 photos and choose one and maybe do a filter on it or whatever and do some highlight on it and blast it out to the world like you're so interesting. Everybody wants to know everything you're doing. It's just like, what the hell is happening? I was walking this morning, got up and decided to go out for a walk and do some chanting. And I was walking on this, it was down the coast. And walking in this bush area, and there's a little bit of a road going through it. And I came around the corner, and there was this rather attractive young woman with her vehicle parked on the side of the road, and she had her phone out, and she had a little tripod and everything, and she was doing this whole performative trip there. And she saw me and became a little embarrassed. And quickly grabbed the thing and kind of like moved off to the side by the car. And it's kind of like, why are you embarrassed? You're going to blast that out to the world. You know, you want people to see it. Why the discomfort now? And this points to something. We won't go into that at this moment. There was a really interesting documentarian, Adam Curtis. He did quite some time ago, he did a BBC documentary, a 4-part one. And it was called The Century of the Self. And he examined 100 years and how people became utterly transformed from being more socially focused to becoming more individually focused. And he wrote about it. He said, the last century saw the rise of an idea that has come to dominate our society. It is the belief that satisfaction of individual feelings and desires is our highest priority. I think that that's profoundly true. And it is the foundation for all of the mental health, well, I can't say all, but a significant proportion of the mental health issues, the depression, and all the stuff that's going on, because it's been established to be such. If you know somebody that's, or yourself perhaps, that have experienced very, very deep depression, and if you ask, who is in there with you? There's no one. The person in that experience is all alone in a deep, dark place, and it's only me. Is that not self-centered? I don't mean that in a cruel way, but it's important to understand. You know, if I know anybody that has these kind of problems and they tend to want to lock themselves away and not bathe and just hide in their room, and one of the best things you can do for them is go in and open the curtains and say, come on, let's just go for a walk, just a little walk. Don't have to take a shower, nothing. Let's just, put something on and let's go for a little walk. Let's go over to the mall. And if you can convince them to do it, and they immediately start having to interact just by being in the presence of others and interact with you in conversation, just a short trip like that, and they come back and they're in a whole different space than before, at the time that you found them. There can be a lot of things, that are underpinning this. I'm not going to get into trying to be a psychoanalyst or a mental health professional. I'm certainly not. But there are fundamental truths and realities that we can observe and be aware of. Shifting back to the advertising thing, and we're talking about that just as a reminder, because I'm going to put forward the idea in our attempt to find happiness, to find meaning and fulfillment, we have accepted this idea that I can basically buy fulfillment. When it comes to advertising, from the very beginning, and I'll just reference, the guy that started most of this and has had more influence on changing the world than probably anybody in the last century is someone that people don't even know about. His name was Eddie Bernays. He was the nephew of Sigmund Freud. He lived in America. His occupation at that time, it used to be called propaganda. He became employed by one of the US presidents to shape his image. This is where it all started. But after the First World War, the word propaganda became a very negative thing. And so he came up with a new word for his profession. Instead of propaganda, it became public relations. Does that tell you something? I mean, that's absolutely remarkable. So he came up with a lot of stuff that has become absolutely foundational to advertising and is now being utilized by big tech companies to fundamentally exploit anybody that will engage with one of these. He introduced all types of concepts and ideas that were absolutely revolutionary, but they were all founded upon using things that his uncle, Sigmund Freud, had discovered, especially things related to the control of the masses. Sigmund Freud did work on this. And Eddie Bernays used this in developing models for advertising, how to manipulate and control. This coincided with a massive shift that was going on in the world. World War I was an absolute celebration for the big industrialists in America. They came in late. They didn't have a lot to lose, like what was going on in Europe. And when they began manufacturing materials for war, all of the factories went into overdrive, and many men were shipped overseas to join in the war effort. And we had a new phenomena. In order to keep production going, they pulled women into the workforce and created a whole new model and experience. And of course, war, fantastic. You're just blowing everything up, and it all needs to be replaced. So the factories are going for it. Yay! Cha-ching! The money is rolling in. And so at the end of the war, the big business leaders, not just in America, but also in the world, the conversation was going on, but it was led by America. They were asking the question, how can we keep this going? What can we do to keep this going? Because this is amazing. So they came up with some ideas. The ideas were very eloquently expressed by a director or board member, director of Lehman Brothers, which was the biggest bank in America at the time. His name was Paul Mazur. And writing in an economic periodical, he made the following statement: we must shift America from a needs to a desires culture. People must be trained to desire, to want new things, even before the old had been entirely consumed. We must shape a new mentality in America. Man's desires must overshadow his needs. Fast forward to a clip of these massive landfills where they're just bulldozing mountains of garbage. A disposable society that we have come to occupy. Wants must overshadow needs. Then, just a few years later, a journalist wrote, "A change has come over our democracy. It is called consumptionism. The American citizen's first importance to his country is now no longer that of citizen, but that of consumer." So we're talking about a massive shift in people's mentalities, even at this point. Herbert Hoover, he was elected president, and of course nobody even knows his name. He was like he didn't do much to catch attention, but he was invited to address now a large convention of PR people and advertising executives, which had now grown into a massive industry. And he stated, in addressing all of these people, "You have taken over the job of creating desire and have transformed people into constantly moving happiness machines, machines which have become the key to economic progress." You find this interesting? Like, seriously far out? Like, we didn't just arrive where we are today by chance. It is by design. The leading economist of this time, Lord Keynes, who came up with a whole bunch of quite radical in his day economic theory and stuff, he openly stated in writing that it is absolutely necessary to cultivate in people the qualities of envy and of greed. That these two forces will drive economic growth more powerfully and faster than anything else. And then he said, if you think that it's wrong to do this to people, I think we must look at the utility of it. And when we have established powerful economies that are stable then we can, more or less, he was saying, I'm paraphrasing, more or less then we can figure out how to fix people. You got to break them first. You got to turn them into greedy, envious monsters who look at things. I mean, advertising is all about, they show you something and they always associate happiness or fulfillment with it. And you look at it and you go, I want that. This is the principle of envy. And it was quite astonishing because in the time that it happened, much of the Western world was still quite, Christianity was very influential. And from my recollection, they have these things called the Ten Commandments that actually came from Moses in Judaism. And one of them was, "Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's goods," that this was considered highly destructive and categorized as sinful, to be looking at what somebody else has and cultivating the desire to have it. And yet this is the foundation that advertising is built upon. And it's just extraordinary how this has all happened without any sort of anybody being almost aware of it. So back in the 70s, there was a British economist, E.F. Schumacher. He did some pretty extraordinary things in his life. And he had a huge change of heart. He decided the world was heading in an extraordinarily bad direction. And he wrote, "The modern economy is propelled by a frenzy of greed and indulges in an orgy of envy. And these are not accidental features, but are the very causes of its expansionist success. And the question is whether such causes can be effective for long, or whether they carry within themselves the seeds of destruction." Very prophetic, very insightful. But the problem is, we mentioned earlier on that peacefulness has to do with a state of consciousness. And when we've talked about advertising and things here, we're talking about a state of consciousness where people are actively seeking to alter your consciousness, your value system, the ideas of where you will find happiness, purpose, fulfillment, and associating it with products. The foundation of all advertising from the very beginning is the recognition that everyone feels some emptiness in their heart. Everyone. That's already like, whoa. That's worrying. And it's unfortunate and it's terribly sad. But then to see that everybody experiences that in their life and to think, oh, how can I manipulate that to extract money from people? And what I will simply do, and this is, again, the foundation of advertising, I know that you are empty. I will offer you this product and make a promise it will fill up the emptiness. This is what you've been looking for. This is what you've been seeking. I mean, way back in like, when was that? The 70s, 80s? Coke had a jingle. Coke is it. Anybody hear that? Or no? It was just this little Coke is it. And that was it. It's kind of like, Coke is it? Like what? It is the thing that will fill up the emptiness. It is the thing that will make you feel complete, that will bring you joy. That is what the offer is. I mean, the latest ad is just absolutely ridiculous, unless there's a new one out that I'm not aware of. You got these polar bears, right? I mean, man killers. Those things are savage, but they've made them all fluffy and nice, and they're all, and they twist the top, and it flies off the bottle, and bubbles come out of the Coke bottle. And what's the slogan? Open happiness. You're joking. How could you even get away with saying that? That's just like astonishing. You are promising that if somebody twists the cap, that they are going to experience actual happiness. It's not just a temporary little tingle on your taste buds. They're offering actual happiness. So, knowingly or unknowingly, it's primarily unknowingly, we have adopted ideas that I can fill up this empty hole in my heart by consuming products, experiences, adulation. When I say adulation, think of the influencer. What's the influencer after? It's after likes, views, positive comments. And it's just like, oh my God, what's happened? A couple of months ago, I saw a new study came out of the UK, and with elementary level children, the leading occupation that they thought would be really cool in their life is influencer. Doesn't produce anything, contribute anything of enormous value to society, just has people who are empty and hungry and doom scrolling, or just not yet doom scrolling, but just scrolling and scrolling, wants to catch attention. People seeking to fill up the emptiness. How are we doing for time? Is this okay? We're good? We're good? Okay. In the ancient yogic teaching, the great sages, they had another perspective. This perspective I've been discussing is the idea that the more I can fulfill my desires, whether it's on the physical level or the mental level, the more I can fulfill desires, the more at peace I will be, the happier I will be. And if I don't try to fulfill it, I'm just going to have all these desires, agitating me and driving me nuts. And so I need to fulfill them. And I need money to do that. And the more I can consume, and the higher quality my consumption is, whatever that's going to mean to any individual and what area, the more fulfilled and happy I will become. In the Bhagavad-gītā, there is another idea that absolutely contradicts that notion, that idea that's become so pervasive. A person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean which has ever been filled but is always still, that person can alone achieve peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires. And that's like, what? This is like complete flip around of things. First of all, there is a recognition that you should expect in the embodied state that there are going to be an incessant flow of desires. That's part of the material experience. But the statement is here, one should become like, and the example like a river, like an ocean. I don't know if you guys have ever seen like some of the big rivers of the world, the massive ones, the ones that are like 80 or 100 kilometers across at the where they exit to the ocean, and where you can be like 4 kilometers out in the ocean near the Amazon and put a bucket in the water, and the water that you pull up is mainly fresh. And you're so far out in the ocean. The amount of water that's rushing into the oceans is extraordinary. But they're saying, just like the ocean that has always been filled, but is always still. That analogy is given. When a person is able to tolerate this, the clutter and the chatter of the mind and the constant desiring, when a person is able to tolerate that, they will have a chance of experiencing, they will achieve peace by this alone, and not by striving to fulfill all of these desires. In another verse it states, one who is not connected with the Supreme, meaning a higher transcendent reality, a higher understanding of things. One who is not connected with the Supreme can have neither transcendental intelligence nor a steady mind, without which there is no possibility of peace. And how can there be any happiness without peace? This is bad news for the world's economy. They have a term to describe a very refined transcendentalist. They are known as an Atmarama, one who is completely self-satisfied. That individual would be considered a massive threat to the economy now. And if a movement was started, it would cause an economic collapse. It would cause a massive reordering of things. And so it's frowned upon. But the question is, what is a higher priority? Your individual happiness and peace, or the economy? Instead of the economy serving people, we have descended into this situation where everybody is serving the economy. The foundation of spiritual life, the most important foundational principle, is the recognition that I am an eternal spiritual being. This body is not me. It is simply a house. It is something I am occupying. It is something that I am using. And my body and my mind, should be contributing to my well-being, my spiritual well-being, my happiness, and not the other way around, that it's destroying my well-being and destroying my happiness. And we live in a world where there is such focus and technology, just like, when you look at this thing, there is like a massive array, like city blocks of computing power behind this thing, looking at you and everything that you're doing and capturing everything. And with all these algorithms that are designed to be absolutely manipulative. Have you, anybody, you guys no doubt dickering around with AI? Have you noticed how sycophantic AI is? Oh, that's a wonderful question. That's a very insightful question. Have you noticed that? It's designed to exploit psychological vulnerabilities of people to make you so-called feel good about yourself. It's not even your real self. And to keep you engaged and more sucked in. Everything is designed like that. The technology behind it. When you hear, the guys that are actually doing this talk, it's just mind-boggling. The detail to which they go to absolutely capture you and manipulate you in so many ways. If we want a change in things, there has to be an internal change. All of these things that we've been talking about, they reinforce an illusion. The idea that this body is me. That's what the word selfie is all about. Taking a picture of your body doesn't take a picture of you, the person residing within. It's just the temporary mortal coil. And of course, when we get sucked into that world, then we are in a world of pain. Why? Because I will feel these reinforced messaging that how my body looks and how it is behaving or performing will determine whether I am lovable, whether I am acceptable, whether I am worthy, whether I have value. That's what it's all about. And that's then what's been exploited. And that is a tragedy. That is an ocean of emptiness. The emptiness that everybody is feeling and experiencing in a more accelerated and exaggerated, magnified way than ever before. You are not this material body. You are temporarily occupying this body. The greatest need for you is to actually come to discover who you truly are apart from this body. Most people live their whole life totally engrossed in the body and other people's bodies and the material world. And all of that is temporary and passing. But you are eternal. You live a whole life of absorption in that which is temporary and changing. And then you are forced to leave it. No choice. The only thing that you can guarantee in your life is death. And yet we don't want to address that. But actually, if we lived in that understanding, the way that we would live, the way that we would deal with others, the way that the choices we would make, they would be different. They would change. So the reason that advice is given in the Bhagavad-gītā about learning to tolerate and you will find peace is because you don't get sucked into this constant reinforcement of this wrong idea and dangerous and harmful idea that this body is me. I become oblivious to my actual spiritual identity. And for that, I cannot experience happiness. We are spiritual beings. We also need spiritual nutrition. You know, the experience earlier of chanting, is it nice or what? I mean, like super nice? It takes you away from things just for a while. Just when you rest your heart, you rest your mind in this ocean of spiritual sound, the dimension of love, of eternity, then one, feels enlivened and uplifted, and they feel some peacefulness. You were sitting there for a certain amount of time, just engaged with these transcendental sounds. It brings relief from that other pursuit where we are just hounded by desire and chasing things and always looking how to fill up the emptiness. So we need to become more focused on this. If you develop a daily meditation practice, and it doesn't even have to be for very long, but every day, if you allocate even a small amount of time to being immersed in spiritual sound, you are directly in contact with the highest transcendental reality, with the spiritual reality. And it begins to awaken you to an increasing awareness of your own spiritual identity. And along with it, these process of chanting, of meditation, of immersion in these spiritual sounds will begin to awaken the most wonderful, wonderful form of spiritual happiness that is utterly fulfilling. You want peace? It's not just about getting away from noise and clutter and agitation. No, there has to be a change of consciousness, a change of heart. You can live in this world and engage with it and work and be responsible and have relationships. But what I'm suggesting is give it a spiritual underpinning, a spiritual foundation. And the way that you will look at yourself as the experience of self-realization begins to, you begin to discover that. The way that you will look at yourself, the way that you will look upon others, and the way that you will look at this world will completely change. And you will have a solid foundation for self-realization and God-realization. That is the promise. Sound like a good deal? Okay, I'm going to stop now. You feeling a little beat up or no? It was okay. This, spiritual truth is enlivening. And when we listen, if we listen and we're objective, we can, open up and actually take it in. You intrinsically know that this is true. This is true for all beings. Not just some, but most will choose not to go down this path, unfortunately. But the more that we endeavor and the more that we influence our own circle of influence, little bit by little bit, it will bring a change in this world. So I will chant, I will lead us in some chanting, since that's what we're advocating as the solution. And after that, I think they're going to have some refreshments, and we'll do a Q&A in case people have questions. And I will use the same mantra they have been using. It's actually one of my favorites, the Maha Mantra, the Hare Krishna mantra. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Meditation is not a mental activity. Meditation means immersing ourselves in transcendence, that which is transcendental. And so this process makes that very easy to just let go and bathe in the wonderful ocean of transcendental sound and love. Yeah?